Welcome everyone. Welcome to Dynamics Futures, the next era of business. I am Suneet Parikh. I am a senior solution architect at the RAND Group. Today I'm going to be covering a very exciting topic about future-proofing financials with advanced budgeting in Dynamics D365 Finance and Operations. The topics that I'm going to be covering is, I want to take you from the inception of creating the budget plan all the way to posting the budget register entry. Budgeting is like very robust these days, and every company requires budgeting to some extent. Some of the benefits of budgeting or advanced budgeting is strategic alignment and control. What it means, it supports organizational hierarchies. So you could build hierarchies saying the hierarchy that I'm going to cover today is like finance prepares and sends the budget, or finance sends last year's budgets to operations department, IT department, sales and marketing department. They fill out the budget plans, they submit it back to the finance for approval. Finance either reviews, rejects, modifies, publishes the budget plan again, and then sends off to the CFO for final approval. It's scenario-based planning. What that means is you can create multiple budget scenarios with last year's actuals, to compare and analyze before finalizing this year's budget. It's all workflow driven, so you can automatically review and approve budget with the budget planning workflows. I have set up some workflows which we'll be looking at in the demo. It gives enhanced visibility and decision-making power to like all departments, finance, CFO. There is a centralized budget repository where all budget plans, revisions, and supporting documents are stored in one place. You can do top-down, bottom-up planning, budget planning process. It's integrated data sources because it pulls in the prior year's actuals, prior year budgets for some planning and forecasting. What all it does, it increases operational efficiency because the templates that you create can be reused. It's reusable templates and layouts, and plus you have security and access control. So with that, let's begin our demo for advanced budgeting in D365. So what I have done, obviously there are lots of prerequisites and setups that are kind of like required in this area, but we are going to kind of like walk you through the process. This process can be completely automated. I'm going to walk you through like a little manual way of doing this, but again, I will also be talking about how we can automate the entire process. So all the budget planning process starts with like creating a new budget plan. So once you create a new budget plan, you will have some options to like select. So here's where I'm going to select like the budget planning process or the steps that I have configured in the system. So I have set up quarterly budget planning as my budget planning module. The responsibility center is which center do you want to generate the budget for. So for example, let's say if I go and pick like operations, you can do that, this entire process like automated. This is just for me to walk you through the workflows and the approval processes. I'm going to give it a name and I'm going to call it Operations Q1 Revised Budget. Okay. Once I kind of like do that, I'm going to create this budget, for us. So all it did for us is kind of like create like the open, it started like the budget register entry process for us. We have not done anything. This is what like the operations people are going to get. So when they get this, they are going to click this worksheet button. They are going to, it's open in Excel, a functionality that that I'm working on. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to open this file. I'm going to bring it down from the next level. As soon as it launches, this is basically giving the worksheet to the operations department of like how and when they should fill out this kind of like template. Obviously I haven't added here prior year actuals and stuff like that, but the idea is you could kind of like provide that information to the individuals. And here's where they would fill out. So this is like the budget for like department 1. Some of the columns that I have set up is like, so I've included like the main accounts, the business unit, the department, and then I'm going having them, the department, operations department, fill out their budget for this particular expense account, right? What that expense account is, we'll see that in a moment. But after this is done, the next steps would be they submit it to workflow. It goes to finance. Finance either approves, rejects, fills in their own kind of like budget that they would want to enforce, all the way to CFO, So let's start with this. So I'm going to enter like $1,000 of like expenses. I'm going to publish this. Once I have published this, and I refresh this, you will see that this budget expense is for gasoline and oil expense. Business unit is 302, which is flooring. 033 is retail operations. Once this budget is entered, kind of like we come back into like our area, where we had started this process. So now you can see that, if I were to refresh the screen, you will see that that entry kind of like shows up, over here for finance department, right? Again, if I look at this budget planning header, it's still on planning 001 stage. So what the operations guys are going to do is once they have published this they are going to go and submit this for workflow approval. So we are going to say finance, please approve. And I'm going to submit the expense for to the workflow for approval. Once that step is run, it's going to kind of like, take you to like the next steps, right? So what that means is, if we kind of like go, now what we did is we created this operations budget. It's still on planning stage 001 because the workflow is running in the background. Once this is done and it went back from operations to the finance department, it changed the budget planning stage to 002. Same thing, once finance does that, it's going to go to 003 stage and 004 stage. Just for the ease of this demo, I'm going to kind of like keep it simple. So let's say finance received this, now it's on planning stage. They can go back to the worksheet, the same worksheet that we had kind of like worked on. We are going to open this worksheet again. And I'm going to bring this onto this screen. Okay. All right. So now you will see that it came in as like, with all the information that was filled out by the operations department. Finance is reviewing this budget, and again, this is just one department, but this could be for any departments, So you see they filled in $1,000. We are going to say finance is going to only approve like $900. We are going to publish this again into like our area. So once this is done, we are going to review like what happened over here. So if I were to show you this screen, and I'm going to move this a little bit, you can see that the line that we created originally just had budget department with $1,000. This budget approved by finance, there is nothing, but if I refresh it because we published it, the $900 shows up. So it gives you complete visibility of like what the departments submitted as budget, what the finance approved as like the budget, and then it's on the way for the budget for the CFO kind of like to approve like the final budgets. Once all the budgets have been entered and completed, you could aggregate that and you could also send that. That would be a completely automated process too. I just wanted to walk you through of like how the flow of the process can be set up within the system. So now if I were to go to workflow, again, let me go back to the worksheet. Let me fill up like the CFO portion of the workflow. So we can see how the CFO is going to review this budget. Let me bring this again back to this main screen here. Okay. So now that we have entered, operations entered that budget, finance reviewed, made the changes, published their changes. It's on the way kind of like to the final stage of approval, which is like the CFO. CFO would be alerted via a workflow that, hey, there is a workflow that's kind of like waiting for you. please go ahead and approve that. So now CFO says that, hey, 900 looks good, or I want to make it like 850. Whatever, however they want to review and kind of like make the changes, it's all kind of like, this would be the final budget register entry that will be enforced kind of like on your budgets and stuff like that, right? So again, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to switch this to a little bit to the right. I'm going to refresh this, and you will see that now 850 is there. Think of like the entire budget process, like, for all departments happening at the same time, which I'll show you how to generate that plan. But you could have multiple lines, you could have thousands of lines kind of like over here for all kinds of expenses, all kinds of departments, and GL, combination of GL accounts, departments, all that, right? So now once this is done, I'm going to mark, so I am going to go, like the CFO is going to mark this as complete. This completes like the budget planning process, kind of like that stuff, right? But more importantly, from here, you can create like this budget register entry for everything from here. It fills out, everything you see now. It switched from 2 to 3, over here. So we are going to generate this budget register entry. It's going to take like a minute to like run, and it's going to tell us that it's going to create like a budget register entry for you, which budget register entry it created for us, right? Okay, so here's where it says USMF 23 created successfully. Let's go and review that budget register entry. So here's where our budget register entry is. 23, 24 created, like I did it twice, so it showed up twice. But the idea is like you take this budget register entry, you will see that the final $850 that the CFO approved is over here. Once all the budget register entry looks good, you can update the budget balance. This is going to kind of like then create the budget within D365 Finance and Operations. This is the budget that you will be able to measure against all your expenses, journal entries, expenses, POs, purchase orders, all that stuff, which is something that we are going to look at, soon after. So this is how the entire budget process kind of like works within D365. The whole process can be automated. What I mean by that is like, so you have under periodic, like if we kind of like look at this a little bit, there are many different ways of generating these budgets. You could generate budget plan from a general ledger. You could generate, budget plan from a budget plan, you can generate for fixed assets, you could do from projects, you could do like any number of stuff. Let me just run this one scenario for you so you can get the idea of the process that we did can be automated for all departments, all divisions across the board. So I'm going to click this one. So the filters kind of like are for which fiscal year. I have done quarterly, so I'm just going to select period 1 to period 3. You can specify what your budget planning process name was. You can give it a name. You can give it the planning scenario, which is like one that we started with, and then follow it through with the workflows and approvals. The responsibility center I'm leaving at finance, because finance has the organization hierarchy set up, which sends the budget plans to like all these departments, right? Again, so I'm going to generate this. It might take like a minute to like generate, but we will see like how the plans are generated, so let's go and switch back to our budget plans. Here we will see when I refresh the screen, you will see that it's coming up. It has now created like this new budget for us. If we go in here and we click worksheet, we download this. and it's going to kind of like show us everything, like all the expenses, because we selected expense accounts. It'll have like as many number of lines that you have. It will show different business units. So for account 500100, your department business unit 1, business unit 303, so on and so forth. It does give you like the department's budget. Now this is something that the departmental people can update and then publish it back, and it'll run through the workflows. The distribution of these budgets can also be managed per user group or by departments as well. So one will only get the budget that are applicable for business unit 001, right? So that's how to like mass generate that. The process then will mimic like the workflows that I showed you. That's how entire budget company's budget can be updated, received, aggregated, completed, all the way from finance to all the departments, back to finance, then on to CFO for final approval. Okay. All right, so I'm not going to save this. So the next thing that I do want to cover is about like the enforcement of the workflows. So every company wants to enforce some workflows. So for that, I have set up some budget control configurations. Budget control configurations are is the area where you define how you want to enforce this budget, right? So obviously you define the parameters, whether you just want like main account, or you want main account and business unit and some other dimensions as well, right? You define some over budget permissions over here. Here's how you define how the budget funds should be calculated. So if we set a budget for an expense account for like $30,000, how is that $30,000 going to be enforced when I either create a purchase order, or I create a journal entry, or I enter an invoice, right? So you take the original budget, you can add the budget revisions. These are the sum that can be done. Out of that, we want to deduct actual expenditures that happened in the month, unposted actual expenditures that are still outstanding to be posted. So that gives us like the net budget available for that particular expense accounts. The documents and journals that tells you like where you want to enforce it. So daily journals, yes, expense reports, yes, so fixed assets, you can determine where you want to enforce this budget. Not for purchase orders, you could uncheck that, right? Then you assign your budget models. So the one that I created was, is at the bottom, which is the quarterly budget, which is just for this quarter. So you could do quarterly budgets and enforce this just for quarter. If you want the next quarter, just add that fiscal year in, or just do fiscal year and it enforces for the entire fiscal year. You define some control rules. Here's where you set up. So what I'm going to show you, or what I'm going to demo, is on the expense account I have set up. I'm calling it expenses. You can call it anything you want. But I'm saying that just for this account 600630, enforce the budget. So I have uploaded budget to this GL account. I want to enforce when anything is entered on this account, either via journals or purchase invoices or invoice journals on the vendor, right? Some other examples are like selling expense. You can define like a range kind of like in there. So, it depends how you want to enforce and set those budgets up, right? Okay. So let me now walk you through like the enforcement kind of like of the budgets. So what I've done for ease of demo, I have gone into general ledger. I've created a simple journal entry just to show that, whether it's going to work or not, right? So the entry that I have created is the budget enforcement entry 924. I'm going to walk you through. Okay. So the date is the quarterly date, so anything between this date should get enforced. So as you can see, I've selected that account 600630002, and I put in like a very large amount, like $35,000. It can be offset to any other account. That's fine. This is the journal that we are creating, right? So I have created this. Obviously the budget is less than $35,000, so it should tell us like what's going to happen. So when I go and validate this journal, or simulate posting. Either way, it should give us an error that either we have the budget or we don't have the budget. When the budget is enforced, it gives you both messages that, hey, you have this much remaining or you don't have anything in that budget. So you can see that it tells us that it exceeds the budget funds available for dimension. It's not going to let you post this entry unless things are corrected. By correction, I mean we probably might have to go and increase the budget in our budget register entries, or add additional budget for this particular GL expense account, or transfer the budget. So in this case, since I selected 600,630,002, if I have the budgets down to like this dimension level business unit, I could transfer from business unit 004 to 002. So there is transfer or there is like revisions, right? You could do either one of those processes kind of like in here. So this is how the GL would get blocked and it would not move forward. You would not be able to do the entry. I've done similar thing for like expenses. So for accounts payable, I have created an invoice journal with the same expense account because that's what we are focusing on today, or at least that's the entry that I have started. So if I look at this entry 925 or journal lines, which I've not posted yet, you can see that it's still open. I can't post that. So I picked up any vendor, Pete's Electronics in our example. I entered all the relevant information, the invoice date, invoice number, and again, I picked up $35,000. I'm trying to post to this account 600630 business unit 002. When I go and validate this journal, I should be expecting to get the same error that there is no budget left, so, right? So again, it's on invoices now that the budget funds are not available for this dimension. The same message that we kind of like saw for like our budget, right? So for our general ledger budget process as well, so, right? Okay, perfect. So this then completes kind of like the overall process of like the budget parts. Okay, so the last thing that I want to cover for today's demo is about like the reports. One more topic that I'll also show you is about like the different configurations that are required, but let's start with the reports. So in budgeting module under inquiries and reports, there are lots of like this reports that you could print out. I'm going to go to the basic budgeting one. Here's where you can see you can run at any point in time, you can look at your actual versus budget over here. There is also actual versus budget by period. So if you are doing quarterly budgets, you could define the quarterly period over here, and you should be able to review the results. So let's go and see how we can run this report. So when you open this actual versus budget report, you will be asked to select a financial dimension set. So you could run that by any dimension sets that you have set up in your financial system. So in our example, we entered our budgets using main account and business units, but any of these dimensions are available for reporting. So let's just start with main account and business unit. It's going to ask you to select which budget model do you want to create this actual versus budget report for. So in my example, the budget model is BUD 2025. You could include submodels. You could select what the register entry status is. So some of them could have been completed, some of them could be in draft. If you want to include all of them, you could select all of them. For now, I want to do completed because I want to show you the numbers that we generated while we created the budget plan, published and entered and completed it. So I'm going to select completed. Once this basic information is filled out, you can apply the parameter. Once you apply the parameter, it's going to run the budget balance, kind of like that stuff. So it shows you all the expenses. So here I have everything that doesn't even have any budgets in there. So I'm going to modify this a little bit and say that give me anything that's greater than $1. So we can see like which accounts have like budget, budget numbers kind of like in there, right? So let's run this. I don't know why it's acting up. Okay. Okay, so here you can see like, these are the expense accounts that we used. Like you can see, the last expense account we used for this account was $850 that the CFO had approved. So this is what gets posted. This is how the amounts get reported, as in when actual amounts are posted within Dynamics and within your system, right? So you can see the variance it generates, the percentage that got used up from the budget, so, or the percentage that's left, kind of like in the budget. So this is how the actual reporting kind of like that works. One of the last topics that I would want to show you is like it does require a lot of configurations. Like I said earlier, you could set up all this once. You can reuse the templates, kind of like that stuff. So you do need to set up like parameters under basic budgeting workflows, how you want the workflows to go back and forth. You need to set up the dimensions. Do you want just main accounts? Do you want main account plus business unit and departments? You need to set up your budget models. So for 2025, 2026, Q1 2025, Q2 2025, so on. The budget codes that we want, original, revision, however we want to name them. And for the planning, also you need to set up some parameters, some workflows, some configurations, some budget planning process. And this is for the budget control. So when we looked at the journal entry where it enforced kind of like the budget, for the invoice journal where it enforced the budget, this is exactly where everything would be entered. Hope this demo was useful. Please reach out to RAN Group for any budgeting requirements, any advanced budgeting setups, configurations. We'll be more than happy to help you. Thank you so much.